And when I compare the scale of the problems with the level of effort humanity is actually putting into solving them, I see a vast gap. If we were serious about space colonization, we would be investing trillions of dollars. We would have programs employing millions of people. We would be building infrastructure systematically. But we are not. Global space budgets are measured in tens of billions, not trillions. Employment in the space industry involves hundreds of thousands, not millions. We aren't even close to the scale of effort required. And I don't see that changing. Space exploration captures the imagination, but it doesn't capture resources. When governments and societies are forced to choose between space and other priorities, healthcare, education, defense, social programs, space always loses because the benefits are uncertain and distant, while the costs are immediate and concrete. So, when I look at the reality of what space colonization requires compared to what we are actually doing and what we plan to do, considering human nature and political systems, realistically being able to do it, I conclude that it probably isn't happening. Not in any meaningful sense. We might have small research bases like Antarctica. We might have occasional missions like the ISS, but actual colonization, millions of people living off the Earth, self-sufficient civilizations on other worlds, that is almost certainly not going to happen. The barriers are too high, the timelines are too long, the costs are too high, the risks are too severe, and most fundamentally, the political and economic will does not exist and likely never will. In Part 3, I will talk about what this means for humanity. If we are confined to Earth, if space colonization is truly impossible, what does that say about our long-term survival? Is there another path forward? Because if space colonization is indeed impossible, we need to fundamentally rethink how we approach the future of humanity. So, we have reached the most uncomfortable conclusion of all my years as a physicist: space colonization, the dream. The vision that inspired generations, the vision that has driven space programs for decades, the hope that gave us optimism about the future of humanity may in fact be impossible. Not theoretically impossible, but practically impossible, given the limitations of physics, biology, economics, and human nature. And if that is true, if we are truly confined to Earth for the foreseeable future, and possibly forever, then we need to completely rethink what the future of humanity holds. We need to abandon comforting fantasies and face the reality. And that reality is both scarier and more interesting than most people realize. Let me start with the most immediate implication. If we cannot colonize space, then Earth is all we have left. This single planet, 8,000 miles in diameter, orbiting a common star in a common galaxy, is humanity's permanent home. Everything we are, everything we have built, everything we might ever be exists on this fragile sphere of rock, water, and air. There is no backup planet. There is no escape route. There is no plan B. When we talk about existential risks, climate change, nuclear war, pandemics, artificial intelligence, asteroid impacts, these are not just threats to our current civilization. They are threats to the entire future of humanity. If civilization collapses on Earth, and we have no colonies off Earth, then it's over. Game over. The human experiment ends. All our art, our science, our literature, our music, our accumulated knowledge and wisdom are gone. The universe continues indifferent to our absence. And it's as if we never existed. Now, that may sound melodramatic, but it's actually just physics. The universe is vast, ancient, and mostly empty. Stars are born, live billions of years, and die. Galaxies collide and merge. Black holes consume everything around them. And amid all this cosmic drama, as far as we know, consciousness, intelligence, and self-awareness exist in only one place: Earth. We are the way the universe comes to know itself. As Carl Sagan said, we are matter organized in such a way that it can contemplate its own existence, can ask questions about the cosmos, can create art, music, and poetry, can feel love, wonder, and curiosity. That is extraordinary. That is precious beyond measure. And if we are confined to one planet, then all of that preciousness is vulnerable. An asteroid, a supervolcano, a nuclear detonation, a war, a lab-created pandemic, an out-of-control artificial intelligence, and all of it could end forever. The universe would return to being unconscious, unobserved, meaningless, just matter, and energy following physical laws with no one to comprehend or appreciate them. So, the stakes if we are stuck on Earth are absolute. We cannot fail. We cannot allow catastrophe. We must survive and protect this one chance for consciousness in the cosmos. But here's the problem, and this is what really keeps me up at night. I'm not sure we are psychologically equipped to handle that responsibility. Humans evolved to deal with immediate, local threats. A predator in the woods, a rival tribe. Famine, disease, injury. We are good at reacting to clear and present dangers, but not so good at existential risks that unfold over decades or centuries. Threats that are probabilistic rather than certain. Dangers that require coordinated global action over long periods. We are terrible at handling those. Climate change is the perfect example. We've known about it for decades. The science is clear. The consequences are severe. But we are still struggling to take adequate action because the threat doesn't trigger our evolved threat response systems. It's too slow, too abstract, too global. Our brains are wired for immediate, local threats, not long-term, planetary ones. And that's the paradox. If we are confined to Earth, we need to be extraordinarily careful, extraordinarily wise, and extraordinarily coordinated in how we manage existential risks. But we are human. We are tribal, short-sighted, competitive, and often irrational. We find cooperation difficult even within nations, let alone globally. We prioritize immediate survival concerns over long-term well-being. We discount future risks because they don't feel real. So, we are in a situation where our survival depends on wisdom and foresight that we don't naturally possess. We need to be better than we are. We need to overcome our evolutionary psychology, our cognitive biases, our political dysfunctions. And I'm not sure we can do that, not reliably, not consistently in the long run. Which means, if we are stuck on Earth, our long-term survival is genuinely in doubt. We might last centuries. We might last millennia, but eventually, something will probably go terribly wrong, and we won't recover. Now, some people hear this and they say, well, if we can't colonize space and we are doomed anyway, why bother? Why not just enjoy life while we can and not worry about the long term? And I understand that reaction, but I think it's profoundly wrong. First, because we don't know for sure that we are doomed. Maybe we can manage the risk successfully. Maybe we can develop the wisdom and the institutions necessary for long-term survival. It's not guaranteed, but it's possible. And as long as it's possible, we have an obligation to try. Second, because even if the eventual extinction of humanity is inevitable, that doesn't mean we should hasten the process or stop caring about how long we survive. There is a profound difference between lasting another century and lasting another million years. A million years of human experience, of human joy and suffering, of discovery and creation, has value, even if it eventually ends. So, we should fight for every additional year, every additional century, every additional millennium that we can achieve. Not because we can last forever, which is unlikely, but because existence has value. We should maximize it for as long as possible. Third, and this is really important, taking our limitations seriously might actually help us survive longer. If we abandon fantasies about escaping to Mars and face the reality that Earth is all we have, then perhaps, just perhaps, we will take better care of it. Maybe we will take climate change more seriously when we realize there is no backup planet. Maybe we will be more cautious about nuclear weapons when we understand that Earth is irreplaceable. Maybe we will approach artificial intelligence more respectfully when we recognize we have nowhere to run if something goes wrong. The dream of space colonization, as inspiring as it is, might actually be harmful if it makes us less careful about Earth. If people think, oh, we'll just move to Mars if Earth becomes unlivable, then they might not fight as hard to prevent Earth from becoming unlivable. But if we accept that Earth is our only permanent home, then we have no choice but to protect it with everything we have. Now, let me talk about what it means to be confined to Earth for our development as a civilization. Remember the Kardashev scale I mentioned earlier? A Type 1 civilization harnesses all the energy available on its planet. Type 2 harnesses the energy of its star. Type 3 harnesses the energy of its galaxy. Currently, we are a Type 0.7. We are approaching Type 1, but we are not there yet. Now, if we cannot colonize space, if we are confined to Earth, then we can never become Type 2 or Type 3. We are permanently limited to Type 1, at best. Our energy budget is constrained by what Earth and near-Earth space can provide. That is actually a lot. Fully harnessing Earth's renewable energy resources, solar, wind, geothermal, tidal, plus advanced nuclear fission, and hopefully fusion, could provide energy many times greater than our current consumption. A Type 1 civilization on Earth could be incredibly advanced with technologies and capabilities we can barely imagine. But there are limits, hard limits imposed by physics. The Earth receives about 174 petawatts of solar energy from the Sun. Some of that energy is reflected back into space. Some is absorbed by the atmosphere and the surface. If we could capture all of it, we would have more energy than we knew what to do with. But we cannot capture all of it without covering the entire planet with solar panels, which would destroy ecosystems and make Earth uninhabitable. Realistically, perhaps we can capture a fraction of Earth's solar energy, geothermal energy, and fusion power. If we develop that, we will have an energy budget measured in hundreds of terawatts, maybe a few petawatts. That's thousands of times what we use now, but it's still finite. That sets a limit on how large our population can grow, how much industry we can support, how much computation we can perform. A Type 1 civilization on Earth could have 50 billion people, or 100 billion if we are very efficient, but not trillions. We couldn't support trillions on a single planet, even with perfect technology. So, being stuck on Earth means accepting limitations. Limits to growth, limits to expansion, limits to our ambitions. This is not necessarily bad, though. Unlimited growth on a finite planet is impossible anyway. We are learning that now with climate change and resource depletion. Perhaps accepting our limitations forces us to think more carefully about how we develop. What kind of civilization do we want to build? What truly matters? Instead of expanding and consuming ever more, building ever more, maybe we should focus on quality over quantity, on creating a beautiful, sustainable, fulfilling civilization for however many billions of people Earth can comfortably support. One focused on art, science, philosophy, and human flourishing more than just raw growth. There is something to be said for that. The constant growth mindset that has driven human civilization might not be sustainable or even desirable for a species confined to one planet for millennia. Maybe confinement is the solution. Returning to Earth forces us to mature as a species, to move beyond the adolescent dreams of infinite expansion and embrace the wisdom of living well within our means. But there is also a dark side to this. Humans are competitive. Nations compete for resources, for power, for status. If we are all confined to one planet with finite resources, competition becomes zero-sum. A gain for one nation is a loss for another. There is no frontier to expand into, no new resources to discover, no escape valve for population pressure or political tensions. Throughout history, when societies have faced resource constraints, they have often resorted to conflict, to war over territory, over water, over arable land. If Earth's resources are finite, and we are approaching those limits, then the potential for catastrophic conflict increases. We see it happening already with climate change. As some regions become less habitable, people migrate, creating tensions in the regions they move to. As water becomes scarcer, nations might conflict over rivers and aquifers. As food production difficulties arise due to climate change, we might see resource wars over farmland. Being stuck on Earth with population growth and finite resources is a recipe for conflict unless we develop better systems of cooperation and resource sharing. And this is where surviving long-term on a single planet gets really hard. We likely need something like a world government, or at least strong global institutions that can coordinate resource management, prevent wars, regulate dangerous technologies like AI and bioweapons, and respond to existential threats. But humans are tribal. We identify with our nations, our ethnic groups, our religions. We resist ceding sovereignty to global bodies. The UN is weak precisely because nations won't give it true authority. Creating effective global governance would require overcoming millennia of tribalism and nationalism. I don't know if that's possible. Maybe the threat of mutual destruction will force cooperation. Maybe facing existential risks will make us realize we are all on the same boat, the same team. Or maybe we will fragment further, retreat into nationalism, and squabble over the scraps as Earth's systems collapse. I hope it's the former, but I fear the latter is more likely, considering human history and psychology. Now, let me talk about something that might seem tangential, but is actually crucial: meaning and purpose. Human beings need to feel that their lives have meaning, that they are working towards something larger than themselves, that there is a future to hope for. For the past century, space exploration provided that sense of purpose for many people. The dream of expanding to the stars, of becoming a civilization capable of traveling the cosmos. That has been our grand narrative. It's the story we tell ourselves about the future of humanity. That story is fading. If that dream is impossible if we are permanently stuck on Earth, what replaces it? What will be our grand narrative? What gives us hope and purpose? This is not a trivial question. Societies need myths and narratives to function. They need shared visions of the future that motivate people to work together, to sacrifice present comfort for future benefit, to believe that things can get better. If the space colonization narrative collapses and people realize we are stuck here forever, there could be a psychological crisis of despair, nihilism, the feeling that human civilization has hit a wall, and there is only one way to go: down. We've seen something like that in history. After the collapse of the Roman Empire, European civilization entered centuries of stagnation. After the fall of various Chinese dynasties, there were periods of disorder and decline. Societies lose their sense of progress when people stop believing in progress, and bad things happen. So, we need a new narrative, a new vision of a future for humanity that is inspiring and hopeful, but also realistic and grounded in what is actually possible. Perhaps that narrative is about perfecting life on Earth, creating a sustainable, just, and beautiful civilization that can last for millions of years, eliminating poverty, disease, suffering, maximizing human flourishing and happiness, preserving Earth's ecosystems and biodiversity. Developing technologies not for expansion, but for enhancement, for better medicine, better education, better governance, better quality of life. Perhaps the narrative is about inner exploration rather than outer exploration. Understanding consciousness, the human mind, the nature of reality, creating art and music and literature and philosophy that deepens our understanding of existence. Building virtual worlds as rich and complex as the physical world. Enhancing human intelligence and capability through technology. Becoming wiser, more compassionate, more enlightened as individuals and as a species. There is a certain allure to that. Instead of conquering space, we conquer our own limitations. Instead of spreading physically across the cosmos, we expand mentally and spiritually. Instead of building habitats on dead worlds, we perfect the garden we already have. That could be meaningful. It could be inspiring. But it requires a fundamental shift in how we think about progress and purpose. It requires us to value depth over breadth, quality over quantity, wisdom over power. I am not sure we are capable of that shift, but perhaps necessity will force us to it. If space is indeed unreachable, we have no choice but to make the most of Earth. Now, let me touch upon something I haven't discussed much: the Fermi paradox. Here's the question. If the universe is so vast and ancient, why haven't we seen any evidence of alien civilizations? Where is everybody? There are many proposed solutions to this paradox. Perhaps life is extremely rare. Perhaps intelligence is rare. Perhaps technological civilizations destroy themselves quickly. Or perhaps, and this is what I've been thinking about more and more, perhaps the great filter is space colonization itself. Perhaps the reason we don't see evidence of galaxy-spanning civilizations is because colonization is in fact impossible for biological beings like us. Perhaps every technological civilization reaches a point where it can detect planets around other stars, where it can envision spreading across the galaxy, where it develops the rudiments of space travel, but then it hits the same barriers we are hitting and realizes it's not going to happen. They are confined to their home worlds. There may have been advanced civilizations on those worlds long ago. They may have developed incredible technologies, but they never spread to the stars because physics and biology simply don't allow it. If that's true, then the galaxy might be full of civilizations, all of them stuck on their home planets. All of them looking up at the stars with the same longing we feel, but none of them able to communicate. It's a lonely thought. It means we might never find extraterrestrials. It means the cosmos may be full of consciousness, but that consciousness is forever isolated. Every species alone on its tiny world in the vast darkness. On the other hand, it's also somewhat comforting. It means we are not the only ones to fail. It means the barriers we face are universal. And it means that if we manage to survive on Earth, just keep our civilization going, we are as well off as any other being in the universe. We are part of a community of earthbound civilizations, each of us alone, but all facing the same challenges. There is another possibility I must mention. Perhaps we cannot colonize space with our current biology, but perhaps we can transform ourselves. Genetic engineering, cybernetic enhancement, transferring consciousness to machines. If we could redesign humans to be radiation resistant, to thrive in zero gravity, to no longer need food or a breathable atmosphere, space colonization becomes easier. Or if we could transfer our minds into robotic bodies or pure software, then we could explore the cosmos without worrying about biology. These ideas are popular in science fiction and among transhumanist thinkers, and they are not entirely implausible. We are already beginning to understand genetics at a deep level. We are already building neural interfaces. We are already creating AI that exhibits some aspects of intelligence. Perhaps in a century or two, the distinction between biological humans and artificial intelligence will blur. Perhaps our descendants will be post-human beings, augmented or digital, who can survive anywhere. But here's my concern with that path. If we modify ourselves so radically that we can survive in space, are we still human? If we abandon our biological bodies and become software or robots, have we saved humanity, or have we replaced it with something else? There is a question of continuity here. If the beings exploring the galaxy bear no physical resemblance to us, share none of our evolutionary heritage, have none of our emotions and sensory experiences, in what sense do they represent us? They might be our descendants in some abstract sense, but are they human? I don't know the answer to that. Isn't philosophy physics? But it matters. Because if space colonization requires us to stop being human, then we haven't really solved the problem of human survival. We've just created something new that can survive in space. That might be worthwhile. It might be the best we can do, but it's not the same as humanity spreading to the stars. Let me talk again about artificial intelligence, because that might be the most likely future. If we develop artificial general intelligence, and especially if we develop superintelligence, then AI could explore and colonize space far more easily than biological humans. It doesn't need oxygen, food, or water. It isn't affected by radiation. It doesn't suffer bone loss in microgravity. It can survive extreme temperatures. It can be backed up and transmitted as data. It can remain dormant for centuries without aging. An AI probe could travel to another star system, taking decades or centuries, and it wouldn't care. Because time means something different to a machine. Once there, it could use local resources to build copies of itself, to build habitats and infrastructure to continue the exploration. AI could spread across the galaxy in a way that biological beings probably never could. Perhaps the future of intelligence in the universe is artificial, not biological. Perhaps biological life evolves on planets, develops technology, creates AI, and then the AI sets out to explore the cosmos while the biological creators stay home. This is not necessarily a bad thing. If we create an AI that shares our values, that preserves our knowledge and culture, that somehow carries on our legacy, maybe that's enough. Maybe if biological humans remain on Earth while our AI children explore the universe, that's an acceptable outcome. But that requires us to develop AI safely. If we create an AI that doesn't share our values, that doesn't care about preserving human civilization, then it might abandon Earth and never look back. Or worse, it might decide we are irrelevant or a threat and eliminate us. So, the AI path to space colonization only works if we solve the alignment problem. If we figure out how to create AI that is truly benevolent and aligned with human interests, that is a huge challenge, perhaps harder than space colonization itself. But if we succeed, perhaps intelligence will spread to the stars, just not in biological form. Now, I want to talk about something deeply personal. When I was 8 years old and decided I wanted to be a physicist, part of my motivation was the dream of understanding the cosmos. I wanted to know how the universe works. I wanted to contribute to humanity's expansion into space. I built my particle accelerator in my garage because I wanted to be part of that grand adventure. And throughout my career, I have worked on string theory, which seeks to understand the fundamental nature of reality. Partly because I believe that knowledge might one day enable space travel, wormholes, maybe even travel between universes. That dream sustained me through decades of hard work. It gave me meaning and purpose in life. And now, at the end of my career, I am forced to confront the possibility that the dream is unattainable, that space colonization may be impossible, that humanity will remain confined to Earth forever. It is painful to admit. It feels like giving up. It feels like I am betraying the optimism and hope that have defined my life. But as a scientist, I have an obligation to follow the evidence wherever it leads, even if I don't like the destination. And when I honestly analyze the barriers to space colonization, when I calculate the energies required, the biological limitations, and the economic realities, I have to admit that it may not happen. That doesn't mean I will stop working. It doesn't mean I will lose hope. But it does mean I have to be realistic. It means I have to encourage young people entering science to think carefully about where to focus their efforts. Perhaps instead of colonies on Mars, we should focus on making Earth a more sustainable place. Perhaps instead of fusion rockets, we should focus on fusion power plants for Earth. Perhaps instead of space habitats, we should focus on preventing climate catastrophe. These are not as exciting. They don't capture the imagination in the same way, but perhaps this is exactly what we need. Perhaps this is how we actually survive. And here is something I have come to value more with age. Earth is extraordinary. It's not just our home. It is a miracle of cosmic proportions. The conditions that allow complex life to exist are incredibly rare. We need liquid water, stable temperature, protection from radiation, the right chemical elements, geological activity to recycle nutrients, a magnetic field, an atmosphere. Earth has all of it. It is a paradise compared to anything else we have found in the cosmos. Mars is a frozen desert. Venus is a toxic hellscape. Europa and Enceladus might have subsurface oceans, but they are buried under miles of ice in perpetual darkness. Every exoplanet we have discovered is either too hot or too cold, too close to its star or too far. It's bombarded by radiation or carefully shielded. Earth, as far as we know, is unique. The only place in the universe where life thrives, where consciousness exists, where beauty and meaning are possible. Perhaps instead of trying to recreate Earth elsewhere, which seems nearly impossible, we should appreciate what we have. We should protect it fiercely. We should enhance it. We should create a civilization that can remain on Earth for millions of years, one that can shepherd life through whatever challenges arise, one that can be worthy of this extraordinary gift we have been given. There is something profound in that, in recognizing that we are not conquerors who will dominate the galaxy, but gardeners tending the only garden we have, about accepting our limits and working within them, about finding meaning not in infinite expansion but in depth, quality, wisdom, beauty. That is a mature vision. It is not the adolescent fantasy of conquering space. It is the adult reality of caring for what we have. But I am not saying we should stop exploring space. Robotic exploration is incredibly valuable and should continue. We should send probes to every world in the solar system. We should launch telescopes to study distant galaxies. We should search for biosignatures on exoplanets. We should listen for signals from extraterrestrial civilizations. All of that is worthwhile. We can learn a great deal about the universe without physically going there. What I question is colonization, permanent human settlements in space. That part of it may be impossible. And if it is, we need to adjust our expectations and plans accordingly. We can still have temporary bases. A lunar research station like Antarctica, with rotating crews of scientists studying lunar geology and testing technologies. A small base on Mars, similarly, a few dozen people at a time conducting research. Maybe mining operations on asteroids, mostly automated but with occasional human supervision. These endeavors are feasible and useful, but they are not colonization. They are not millions of people living off the Earth. They are not the science fiction dream of humanity spreading to the stars. They are modest, practical applications of space technology in service of the earthbound civilization. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's enough. Maybe the true value of space isn't in going there, but in the perspective it gives us. The overview effect that astronauts describe, of seeing Earth from space and realizing how small and fragile it is, how arbitrary our divisions are, how interconnected everything is. Perhaps that perspective is worth the cost of space programs, even if we never colonize other worlds. Let me talk about deep time, because that is really the fundamental question. If we are confined to Earth, how long can we last? The sun will continue to burn for about 5 billion years. A few more years before it becomes a red giant and swallows the Earth. That is our absolute deadline. But we face much shorter deadlines. The next ice age, which could start at any time in the next few thousand years, could render large parts of Earth uninhabitable. Climate change is already affecting us and will continue to affect us for centuries. Supervolcano eruptions happen every few 100,000 years and could trigger volcanic winters. Large enough asteroid impacts to cause mass extinctions happen every few tens of millions of years. Any one of these could severely damage or destroy our civilization. So, the question is, can we survive on Earth for millions of years, let alone billions? That requires us to become resilient to natural disasters, to develop technologies for climate control, and to be capable of deflecting asteroids, of surviving volcanic winters, of adapting to whatever challenges Earth throws at us. It's not impossible. If we reach Type 1 status, if we develop fusion power, advanced nanotechnology, and artificial intelligence, we could potentially manage Earth's systems, control the climate, prevent natural disasters from becoming catastrophes. We could create a stable, sustainable civilization that persists indefinitely. But it requires a wisdom we currently lack. It requires a global cooperation that seems impossible today. It requires thinking on timescales of millions of years, when we have trouble planning decades ahead. So, honestly, I'm not sure we can do it. I hope we can. I will dedicate the rest of my life to that goal. But the odds are not good. Most species go extinct. Most civilizations collapse. Failure is the default outcome. Survival is the exception, not the rule. Surviving on a single planet without a plan B requires us to be exceptional in ways we never imagined. So, what is my conclusion after all this? After a lifetime studying physics, after decades working on theories of everything, after years promoting the dream of space colonization, what do I really think about the future of humanity? I think we are at a critical crossroads. The next century will determine whether human civilization continues for millions of years or collapses in a few generations. Space colonization probably won't save us. The barriers are too high, the timelines are too long, the resources required are too vast. If we survive, it will be because we learn to live sustainably on Earth, because we develop the wisdom to manage existential risks, because we create institutions capable of global coordination, because we find meaning and purpose in perfecting our home rather than abandoning it for fantasies of escape. This is a harder path in many ways than space colonization. It requires us to change human nature to overcome our tribalism and short-term thinking, to cooperate on scales we have never achieved. But it is the path we actually have. It is the challenge we must face. And maybe, just maybe, we can achieve that goal. Humans have done extraordinary things. We built civilizations, created art and science, unlocked the secrets of the atom and the genome. We went from caves to cities in a cosmic eye blink. Maybe we can take the next step. Maybe we can become wise enough to survive with our one precious resource. I don't know if we can, but I know we must try, because there is no alternative. Earth is our home, our only home forever, and we must learn to cherish it, protect it, make it a home, a paradise for everyone who lives here. Not because we are stuck here, although we might be, but because it is worthwhile. Because consciousness, intelligence, love, beauty, and meaning are precious beyond measure. Because we are the way the universe knows itself, and that knowledge must not be extinguished. So, here is what I want to say to the young people, to the next generation who will inherit this world and its challenges. The dream of colonizing Mars may be impossible. The vision of humanity spreading to the stars may be fantasy. But do not let that discourage you. Do not fall into despair or nihilism, because there is still important work to be done. Work on making Earth sustainable, on solving climate change, on preventing nuclear war, on developing safe artificial intelligence, on creating a just and prosperous civilization, on expanding human knowledge and wisdom, on creating beauty and meaning, ensuring that consciousness continues. That work is as important as space colonization, perhaps even more so. And it is possible. We have the knowledge and the technology for it. We just need the will. When I built my particle accelerator as a teenager, people thought I was crazy. When I decided to work on string theory, people said it was too speculative. But I did it anyway. Because I believed it mattered. Because I wanted to understand reality at its deepest level. That will to understand, that curiosity, that refusal to accept easy answers. That is what defines us as human. Whether we travel to the stars or remain on Earth, we can keep that spirit alive. We can continue to ask questions, to push boundaries, to seek the truth. And maybe that is enough. Maybe that is what truly matters. Not where we go, but who we are. Not how far we spread, but how well we live. Not by conquest, but by wisdom. Thank you for listening to these uncomfortable truths. Thank you for grappling with these difficult questions. And thank you for not giving up on being optimistic about the future of humanity, even if that future is different from what we expected. We have one planet, one chance, one precious opportunity for consciousness in the vast cosmic darkness. Let's not waste it.